Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Off the Top. We got a beautiful Sunday here in New York City. Had a cup of coffee this morning, got a little journal in, and now I'm here with you. So thank you for taking the time. I wanted to start this week with a video that I saw from the number one golfer in the world, Scottie Scheffler, and it is so perfect in every single way. This guy just opens up at a press conference and lets the world into his mindset, which is relatively shocking, but I guess makes a lot of sense. He talks about the fact that winning for him is very fleeting. Like, he got to be number one in the world and then kind of looked around him and said, what's the point of all this? Golf gave him this sense of accomplishment, but didn't satisfy the deepest part of his purpose and what he described as the deepest calling within his heart. He goes on to say a lot of the people in the world become number one at something and then realize, like, what's the point of all this? And when a reporter pressed into that comment and said, you know, what do you actually feel like is your purpose? He said, you know, I'm very grateful to be in this position, but if golf ever got in the way of me being a great partner or a great father, it would be the last day that I play golf professionally. And I think it is such a great message on, number one, vulnerability from a man that from the outside looking in has absolutely everything, but also it's a really important message in what we all could define as our purpose. I think, speaking for myself, a lot of times we can chase outcomes delusionally. And if you do that, a lot of times people that do make it look back and say, you know, what's the point of all this? If it doesn't satisfy that part of your heart that gives you purpose and is more outcome driven to be number one in the world, then I can imagine, yeah, that's a pretty scary realization. But I just love the grounded take from him and really respect the fact that he opened up those doors to the world, and the internet was very receptive to it. I also think, yeah, a lot of times you might get to that point where you become number one in the world, but in reality, what you're really chasing is the person that you become through the process of that work. You know, people talk about the debate between outcome versus process. It's something that I'm trying to soak up way more, is just like enjoying the moment versus hyper fixate on a certain outcome and only letting myself feel fulfillment or excitement or happiness once I've attained that, you know, outcome, whatever that may be. And I think the real unlock is appreciating the person that you become through the process of reaching that outcome. For instance, I talk about Chris Williamson a lot, but if you go back to some of his first episodes of Modern Wisdom, he's a podcaster that's focused on psychology, mental health, and 900 episodes later, like the way that he articulates his message and just like seeing his brain from this lens is so unique because he learned over the course of 6-7 years from talking to these people, reading books, and was able to, I don't know what the right word is, but bend his brain in a way that allowed him to articulate his message in a much clearer way. And that for me is like a really inspiring thing. Whatever that looks like to you, I think is beautiful. So hats off to Scottie. I'm going to clip a piece of the conference interview at the end of this Off the Top. So stick around if you want to check it out. Challenges from the week. So this was a little bit more of a challenging week for me. I think there was a lot of different things going on, specifically with the podcast that we launched on Tuesday, Ann Malum. She's probably, quote unquote, like our largest guest that we've had so far. But yeah, the lighting in the apartment from the episode was something that, I wasn't super proud of. And that's just a result of iteration and trying different things. But then also I got a text from a buddy who had watched the full episode that called out like some audio issues in the latter half of the episode. And by then, the views had come in, and if you saw or heard those issues, I apologize. But there's so much that goes into putting one of these episodes together, and I think I come at this from wanting to do right by the guests that we have on, and if I don't meet their expectations or I feel like I let them down, it's a huge weight on my back. And so I felt that this week. And Wednesday, Thursday, I was thinking about like the pace of this podcast and if it's something that I can keep up with everything else going on. And some days I wake up and I'm really excited. I'll hear back from a potential guest and get really energized by that. And then some days I'm like, this is just challenging. But we also put out a role to bring somebody on to help produce the episodes. So we're testing the waters in that regard and just seeing if there's the right fit. But as of now, it's literally start to finish, produced, edited by Luke, and it's a lot. So anyway, it's a challenge that I've taken on, and I think having fun throughout this process is just like the only way to survive. And so focusing on what makes this fun and what doesn't make this fun and trying to eliminate every single variable that does not make this fun allows you to win long term. Shout out BenchGive for sending me the text on the audio issues. I respect that a ton. So thank you, sir. Fucking legend. Wins from the week. So I got a text from the professor Tajo with an article from Vogue Business, an excerpt that I think is a really interesting one. I'm going to read it to you, but it talks a little bit about the importance of hosts in modern day. They said the host capital is their ability to gather people, says Roth. An influencer or a content creator is focused on producing content. Their value is aesthetic or performance-based, but a host creates sustainable in-person belonging. We believe that the host is the next influential archetype because they hold the most valuable thing in culture today, social capital. And I think that is extremely relevant. I don't love the word social capital because to me that feels a little bit like social climby. But in my journal after reading this, I was writing, and I'm going to read you what I wrote reflecting on this. The way we navigate a container or a space as humans has and will always be one of the most important layers of our existence. It's how we relate, connect, and belong. And through this exercise, I actually wrote out a more detailed piece on just what I think is my art. And I've toyed around with a lot of different mediums for what I think my expression can be. But after all of this iteration, for me, it's like the hero shot of a table and working with some of the most creative minds in the world to come up with moments and creative themes that allow guests to experience something that they've never experienced before. And in this new project that we've got at the end of the month, I felt this. I love the interactive nature of the art where you can plan to the nth degree for everything to go right. But in reality, what makes this art of hosting and coming up with creative concepts for people to experience is the interactive nature where guests will contribute to the art and their impression of the experience and how they then contribute to the space ultimately is part of the finalized form of the art. And so anyway, it was a realization that I had, and I know it's my life's work alongside this, but it truly feels like I think I've discounted it as art, quote unquote, historically, but it's something that really energizes me. And when we have the opportunity to do it, it's something that I know I can win at long term alongside these brilliant creative minds. So anyway, just a reflection from this morning, and I feel like was a big win for me after a couple down days. Eyes on. Yeah, this is also from Tajo. He's got his pulse on trends and somebody I share a lot of stuff with. And so he sent me a podcast from Gstaad guy, this like content creator who basically makes fun of rich people. But he started a podcast. He's like, I think 9 in. And at first I just discounted it. And I was like, there's no chance I'm going to watch this. Like it's from like an influencer, and that's like not how I want to spend my time. But he had an episode with the APL brothers, and the way that he held space, I was extremely impressed. Asks great questions. The setting itself is very relaxing, and I think it was a lot of inspiration for me. I want to be able to make this feel a little bit more cozy. When I invite a guest on, I spend a lot of time doing my research, and I draft up notes that I send them ahead of time. Say, here's topics that I'm thinking about. If you want to prepare, like, here's some things that, you know, if I were you, I would just think about, and offer it as more so just like a nod that I'm appreciative of their time. And at times, though, I find myself teeing them up when I interview versus just letting the conversation like naturally flow. And some of the art of podcasting is seeing someone's reaction to information. So I'm trying to have a better balance of like preparation and understanding the unique character and their archetype prior to going into the interview, as well as allowing for some serendipity and allowing for the conversation to feel a little bit more relaxing. So shout out Tajo and shout out Gstaad guy. Great app. I'm going to leave you with a quote, something that I've thought about a decent bit, just on charisma. Charisma is not about you. It's more about how you make people feel about themselves. When I was in Denver, something that stuck with me, my mom called out a point. She was like, I approach situations with this idea of like, how can I add value? And I don't know that value is the right word, but what I saw in her was going the extra effort to make people feel seen and heard, and a lot of times make people's day. One of my favorite parts about my mom is, you know, anytime she comes to New York and gets out of a cab or Uber, you know, she knows the Uber driver's name. She's had a conversation with them for 45 minutes, and that's a genuine curiosity. and an approach that I think we all can learn from. Like, what if we all took a second every single day to be like, how can I make somebody else's day? And how can I focus less on myself and invest into other people? All right. That's it. We're chugging away, baby. We've got some exciting episodes coming up. We've got Sean this week. He's a former GQ writer that became a coach for men, and he's got some incredible nuggets. So very excited to have him on, and think that you will get some good things from it. So shout out, Sean. I'll see you guys on the other side.
I'm not here to inspire somebody else to be the best player in the world, because what's the point? You know, this is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of like the deepest, you know, places of your heart. You know, there's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life, and then you get there and all of a sudden you get to number one in the world, and then they're like, what's the point? And, you know, I really do believe that, because, you know, what is the point? You're like, why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis. It's like showing up at the Masters every year. It's like, why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know. Because if I win, it's going to be awesome for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to get to the next week, and it's going to be like, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And it's just like, we're back here again, you know? So we really do. We work so hard for such little moments. And, you know, I'm kind of a sicko. I love putting in the work. I love being able to practice. I love getting out to live out my dreams. But at the end of the day, sometimes I just don't understand the point, you know, because I don't know if I'm making any sense or not, but am I not? It's just one of those deals, you know. I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life. But does it fill the deepest, you know, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not. You know, that's why I talk about families being my priority, because it really is. You know, I'm blessed to be able to come out here and play golf, but if my golf ever started affecting my home life, or it ever affected the relationship I have with my wife or with my son, you know, that's going to be the last day that I play out here for a living. You know, this is not the be-all, end-all. This is not the most important thing in my life. And that's why I wrestle with, why is this so important to me? Because, you know, I would much rather be a great father than I would be a great golfer.